Okay. Okay. You people can ask me questions either in English or Hindi, whichever is convenient to you. Let me introduce myself. I am Vani Mam. I work as scientific officer at NSNAS Patiala. I have delivered the 4 lectures in this week from 1st to 4th of August. So those are my lectures. If you have any questions on those lectures, you can go ahead and ask me questions. आप लोगों का क्लास स्ट्रेंथ क्या है? इन केस आप लोगों को कोई सवाल नहीं है, प्रॉबेबली आई थिंक हम ये डिस्कशन को बंद कर सकते हैं, सो दैट वी सेव आपका टाइम भी और मेरा टाइम भी. So कोई डाउट नहीं है क्या?
Yes, am I audible, ma'am?
आप थोड़े से लाउड होंगे क्योंकि मुझे आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है. थोड़े से लाउड.
I'm sorry, I don't understand Hindi. I will speak English and Tamil only.
Yes.
Sorry.
Please do speak in English. I will give you answers in English only. Don't worry.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, ma'am, I have a doubt. Like when you were explaining, it was the third part. Was yes, in the fat under the topic, 4 types of fats are there. So you were explaining about MUFA and PUFA, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yes.
And it was so fast and I couldn't follow it up.
Okay.
Could you please explain once again the sources or the functions of it.
If you give me 1 minute time, I will reshare that slide for you so that
Yes.
you are talking about the same thing and you and I are on the same page. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Take it. Thank you.
थोड़ा वक्त दीजिए। So your question was on fat, right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me share it for you people. Share screen. I will not be able to blow up the slide. There is some technical issue. So I will go straight to the sources where you had a doubt, right?
Okay.
This is the slide you have doubt? Because this is this slide. Actually, what we are trying to understand is fats are divided into different types. First differentiation is fat with saturation and fat with unsaturated, which means saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Okay, when we say saturated fats generally come from an animal source. Okay,
understood.
these fats are more harmful as compared to unsaturated fat. So MUFA is unsaturated fat, PUFA is unsaturated fat. Okay.
Okay.
MUFA has a single bond between the saturation fats, whereas PUFA has many bonds between fats. That's the chemical structure. So these fats are differentiated into these types based on the chemical structure of the fat. Okay. So fat which is MUFA and PUFA majorly come from plant source. When it comes to MUFA, it is completely plant source. When it comes to PUFA, there is both combination of animal source and plant source.
Okay.
So classical example is any fat content in a fish is PUFA.
Okay, so basically this MUFA and PUFA are good fats.
MUFA and PUFA are considered as good fats, whereas saturated fat is considered as bad fat. However, what we have to understand is the entire day's calorie content is distributed between carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
Okay.
For athletes, it is per kg body weight for carbohydrate and per kg body weight for protein, depending on the sport, the intensity, and many other factors which are discussed in the those videos. Now, when it comes to fat, it is not based on sport, but it is based on the body composition goals.
Okay.
So for body composition goals, the minimum allowed, if you have to work on fat percentage, if you want as an SNC coach, you are looking to lean down the athlete, make more muscles. So for one of your target is to reduce the total amount of fat in the body, correct?
Yes.
So in such a case, the total calories from fat would be derived from only 15%.
Okay.
But under normal circumstances, it can go to as high as 30%. So this distribution of fat in the total day's calorie intake will depend on the body composition goals.
Okay, understood. Yes, thank you.
Any other question? Let's see if I have any questions on the chat box.
Ma'am, the MUFA and PUFA have any abbreviations? No?
Yes, MUFA is monounsaturated fatty acid. PUFA is polyunsaturated fatty acid. So the number of bonds which make that fatty acid are multiple in number. That is the reason it is called polyunsaturated. The number of bonds in MUFA, there is only one bond between two fatty acid chains.
Okay,
We
thank you.
have one, yeah. We have one question, pre-post workout nutrition, please explain. See, when you're talking about pre-exercise, the first goal of a pre-exercise session, first and foremost, is the muscle glycogen stores. If there are muscle glycogen stores, then there is energy in the form of glycogen. When you are doing the exercise, it will be broken down to release ATP, which is our form of energy, correct? So when this is happening, if you don't have the source material, can you have the product? Not possible. So the first goal for a pre-workout is having the right amount of muscle glycogen stores. The second criteria to have a pre-workout is to have the body in euhydrated state. Euhydration means optimal hydration stage. In this videos, it was described that the amount of water in male on an average is 60 to 65%. Whereas in the case of females, it is averaged at 55 to 60%. Okay. So when the athlete is going to the training, the athlete should be hydrated enough. That condition is called euhydration. So these two parameters. Number 3 parameter is if the athlete is fit from here as well. So how do we boost the athlete? We could boost the athlete psyche by, for example, giving them certain foods which will increase their attentiveness. Probably we can use caffeine, we can use fruits such as bananas, so that they are going to the session in a manner that is desirable to complete the exercise. This is one. This is the goal of pre. Post nutrition, the goal of post nutrition is to recover from the damage that has occurred because of exercise. So what are the damage that occur because of exercise? First thing is, since muscle glycogen is broken down through biochemical parameters, gives ATP, that is energy, there is depletion of the source. If you have 100 rupees, you're using all the 100 rupees, what is left with you? Nothing else. So you have to go and feed back the source and keep it ready. For example, even better example I will give you for easy understanding. If you have an account where the minimum balance is 5,000 rupees. Okay. Banks like HDFC, you know, they have minimum. It could be 5,000. Normal banks have balance amount 1,000, 2,000. The figure is not important. The important is to understand the fact. If the minimum amount that must be in a bank account is 1,000 rupees, 2, 5, whichever it is. If you remove those numbers also, what will happen? Over a period of time, they will start deducting money from your account, already existing amount. So what is happening here? You are losing on the benefit. You are losing on, you are aggravating or adding loss to yourself. Two things are happening. You are losing profit, because interest will not be added to that amount. Second thing, what will happen? You are also losing more, because if it was only 1,000 rupees bank balance, if you maintain that bank balance, they will not deduct money. But if you keep less, they will keep deducting money from that. You got the point. Similarly, if glycogen is not available, if you used it, what you should do? You should put it back so that there is no damage or loss created because of it. Number 1. Number 2 is, what happens is, you all are very much aware that when you exercise, muscle breaks down. There is a lot of extensive metabolic byproducts, including breakdown of muscles. There is tissue damage, cell damage. Therefore, repair is required. So if repair is required, what you should do? You should work on those lines. So we are working on the loss of energy, which must be replenished, which is a fuel source. Second, we should work on the damage that has caused because of exercise. Third factor that you have to work is the fluid loss. Sweating temperature of the body is trying to match with the additional heat that it has now opportunity to encounter to. The body's core temperature should always remain constant. If it is not able to remain constant, then we will die ultimately. So in order to maintain that constant temperature, the heat generated within the body is expelled out through sweat, is removed from the body as sweat. This is the shorter version. Okay, it is a very lengthy process. I'm telling you a shorter version. When this is done, which means what are you doing? You're sweating, means you're losing fluid. When you lose fluids, you're also losing many minerals, including sodium, potassium, iodine. All these are some examples of minerals that are lost during sweat. Okay, in that case, what you should do? You should replace. In addition to this, recovery. One, replacing lost glycogen, repairing tissue damage, then you're replacing fluid, you're replacing lost electrolytes. Fifth thing you have to do is now build on what is existing. If you have to build on what is existing, then you have to work on recovery. So these are 5 things that you have to work when you're working on post-workout nutrition. Okay. So you have pre-workout nutrition, which is very specific. If your pre-workout nutrition is not right, then definitely the demerits, the loss for an athlete is very simple. The athlete will not be able to complete his training session. He will be exposed to risk for injury. He will have poor concentration skills, poor concentration, loss of focus. All these are and risk for injury. So these are 4 things that no athlete would need. This is not 4 things that any athlete should accommodate him with. Therefore, both pre and post nutrition is required. Okay. Next question, ma'am, kindly explain the nutrition diet that we have to take into account when we are reducing our weight during competition. There is no need to reduce weight during competition period because the weight will invariably be lost because of the high intense exercises. Weight will reduce. If you observe any athlete during a competition phase, the athletes will tend to lose weight by a few kilos. So there is no worry to there is no need to worry about reducing weight during competition period. In combat sports, okay, if you're talking about combat sports, then this is a completely different concept. This concept has not been discussed in the class because it is completely different. When you're talking about weight reduction, it is not weight reduction, it is weight making. Because when you lose a certain amount of weight just before competition, what you generally do as an athlete is you go back to the competition with a higher weight. After you finish the weigh-in, the borderline is weigh-in. At the time of weigh-in, you are exactly the same weight, but before the weigh-in and after the weigh-in, the weight is going to be different. It is not the same exact weigh-in weight. So it is a completely different concept. It will take one full minimum 1 hour session to explain, but very simple is when you want to when you want to do weight making and combat sports, care must be taken that you tend to not reduce weight in the last day of the competition. This is one advice that I can give you. Explain Hindi also, ma'am. During the competition, carbs kitna lena chahiye? During competition, यानी कंपटीशन के दौरान आपको स्ट्रैटेजीज होती है. प्रिपरेशन टू कंपटीशन एक तरीका है एंड कंपटीशन के टाइम पे एक तरीका है। जब कंपटीशन ही हो रहा है देन दो इवेंट्स के बीच में जितना आपका डिफरेंस आती है, दो इवेंट्स की जो टाइम कहते हैं ना, सो दो इवेंट्स के टाइम के बीच में आपको कितना वक्त मिलेगा उस हिसाब से न्यूट्रिशन बदलती रहेगी। सो ये स्पेसिफिक नहीं है, बहुत ही डायनामिक है। स्पोर्ट के हिसाब से चेंज होगा, आपकी इवेंट के बीच की रिकवरी टाइम जितना हमें देते हैं, टू हीट्स के बीच में जितना टाइम देते हैं उससे डिफर करेगी, एंड डिफर ये भी करेगी कि आपका गोल क्या है, आप ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग आपकी जो न्यूट्रिशनल स्टेटस क्या है इसके ऊपर भी डिपेंड करेगा, राइट। सो
मैम लेकिन बोलते हैं कि कंपटीशन के पहले कार्बोहाइड्रेट बंद कर देते हैं, ऐसा कुछ है क्या? लेना बंद कर देते हैं?
बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, गलत इंफॉर्मेशन है कि कार्बोहाइड्रेट बंद करनी चाहिए। कौन सी स्पोर्ट के हैं आप अर्चना? सॉरी,
मैं तो स्विमिंग की हूँ, मैं स्विमिंग की हूँ, लेकिन ऐसा या तो बहुत ज्यादा लेते, ऐसा कुछ है क्या मैम? ये मुझे भी नहीं मालूम, समझ में नहीं आया।
नहीं
ज्यादा लेना चाहिए
ऐसे
कि
कोई भी तरीका नहीं है जहां पे आपको कार्बोहाइड्रेट लेना बंद करनी चाहिए, ये इंफॉर्मेशन गलत है। हाँ मानसी, आप कुछ क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे थे।
Ma'am, then what is carbohydrate loading?
Carbohydrate loading is a concept which is used exclusively for endurance and ultra endurance sporting events। यानी कि कोई भी स्पोर्ट जब कंपटीशन खेला जाता है उस कंपटीशन की टाइम जो है वो 90 मिनट से ऊपर होनी चाहिए। यानी कि कोई भी एंड्योरेंस या अल्ट्रा एंड्योरेंस इवेंट्स हो उसी स्पोर्ट में 90 मिनट से ऊपर आपको वो टाइम लगेगा। तो ये पहला चीज है, कौन सी स्पोर्ट में यूज करेगी करना चाहिए एंड्योरेंस अल्ट्रा, बाकी कोई भी स्पोर्ट कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग यूज करना एडवाइजेबल नहीं है, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग का मतलब है ये एक ट्रेनिंग मेथोडोलॉजी है, न्यूट्रिशन ट्रेनिंग को मिक्स करते हैं एंड इस स्ट्रैटेजी को कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग करते हैं। यानी कि आपकी आज कंपटीशन है, देन डिपेंड करेगा कि आपकी ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग न्यूट्रिशनल स्टेटस क्या है एंड आपको क्या गोल रीच करनी है। अगर ए है आपको आज से मैक्सिमम 4 दिन पहले, यानी कि आज का तारीख 8 हो गया तो 5 तारीख से 5, 6, 7, 8 सिर्फ इतनी 4 दिन मैक्सिमम कंपटीशन दिन से पीछे हमें कैलकुलेट करना है। तो 4 दिन हो सकता है, 3 दिन हो सकता है, 2 दिन हो सकते हैं, 1 दिन भी हम कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग कर सकते हैं, लेकिन मैक्सिमम जो हम कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग कर सकते हैं वो 4 दिन। सेकंड, तो इसके साथ हर हाल में क्या करना पड़ेगा, एक्सरसाइज टेपर करना ही पड़ेगा। अगर एक्सरसाइज टेपरिंग नहीं हो रही है देन कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग करने का मतलब ही नहीं। दोनों साथ चलनी चाहिए। अगर कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग के साथ साथ अगर आपकी एक्सरसाइज टेपर नहीं होती, इक्वल डायरेक्शन में यानी ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन में चलनी चाहिए। जितना आपका कार्बोहाइड्रेट कंटेंट बढ़ता जाएगा उतना आपका टेपरिंग होनी चाहिए, तब ये सही परफॉर्मेंस बेनिफिट देगी। चौथी चीज, जब हम कार्बोहाइड्रेट इंक्रीज कर रहे हैं और एक्सरसाइज टेपर करते जा रहे हैं तो क्वांटिटी कितनी होनी चाहिए कार्बोहाइड्रेट्स की। अगर 4 दिन पहले मान के चलते हैं, कंपटीशन दिन से 4 दिन पहले आपका एथलीट को कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग शुरू करा है, देन उस दिन आपको कार्बोहाइड्रेट की जो मात्रा जो है पूरे दिन में 7 ग्राम्स पर केजी बॉडी वेट देनी चाहिए। जैसे जैसे दिन नजदीक आती है कंपटीशन दिन के पास, तब तक आपको पहुंच जाना चाहिए 12 ग्राम पर केजी बॉडी वेट। हो गया। इसके साथ साथ आपको क्या करना चाहिए, फैट को धीरे धीरे कम करनी चाहिए, प्लस प्रोटीन को मॉडरेट अमाउंट्स में रखना चाहिए। अगर ये सारे चीजों में टिक मार्क होती है देन कार्बोहाइड्रेट लोडिंग की बेनिफिट होती है, अदरवाइज उल्टा पड़ेगी कार्बोहाइड्रेट। ओके, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन। मैम, टेल अबाउट ग्लाइसेमिक इंडेक्स। Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. And one thing more I wanted to ask, that there are certain sports, or even during regular gym practices, some people start avoiding water. What and how is that practice, and what is the benefit of that? Isn't it harmful because it will cause more of cramps if the water is reduced from the body? So the cramps, the susceptibility of cramps or the risk factor increases because of that, due to
See,
dehydration.
first and foremost is what you need to understand is the person who is going to a gym an athlete, a non-athlete, a person who will compete, or a person who will not compete? 4 factors. You have to identify who the person is. If the person is a non-athlete, then we needn't worry. It is not our domain. It is not our concern. Our concern is about athletes. So next question, is he going for competition? Third question, is he into which sport? Before he asking, is he going for competition? Ask in which sport he is. If he is into bodybuilding, cutting down water is their way of sculpting, body sculpting, which is their way of showing their performance. That is a way to show their performance, body sculpting. So if they are bodybuilders, that is a completely different story. If you are talking about athletes who have come to you for conditioning, who have come to you for strength training, then no athlete should be encouraged to reduce or avoid ingestion of fluids. Now, the second question is, what happens to athletes if they are into combat sports, because they use many methods of losing? Then you have to refer them to a proper sports nutritionist, because there is a specific strategy wherein weight loss can be achieved without no risk for injury. So they have to follow an entire protocol that the sports nutritionist will have. Okay. Next question is, ma'am, tell about glycemic index and glycemic load. See, glycemic index means it is a value which indicates the carbohydrate digestibility of a food. This is the most simplest explanation. I'll give you example along with it. First and foremost is, if we take sugar, if we consume sugar, the rate at which we get glucose into the bloodstream is very high. Before that, I'll give you one more example. If I directly take glucose, instantaneously the blood has glucose. But if I take sugar, it will take some time for sugar to convert into glucose, because sugar is not glucose. The chemical composition of sugar is fructose and glucose. So it is a 2 monosaccharide molecules. Glucose is 1 saccharide molecule, sugar is 2 saccharide molecules, which is a disaccharide. Okay. So for disaccharide to break into monosaccharides, it will take time. Similarly, food has different types of saccharides. The level of the bonds between each of these single saccharide unit is different. Many internal bonds. Has many internal bonds. Since it has many internal bonds of monosaccharides, breaking them will be very difficult. It will take more time. So the moment it takes more time, the release of glucose into the bloodstream will take more time. So this is how we understand glycemic index. Single molecule of glucose, which is a monosaccharide, is immediately converted. It is glucose only. So there is no requirement for conversion. If it is a sugar disaccharide, it just needs fraction of a second to convert from to break glucose and fructose. Therefore, that also can easily glucose can be entered into the bloodstream. So, as the number of structures of bonds increases, what will happen is invariably the digestion will increase. The time to digest and release as the chemical component glucose will increase. This is how you classify them as high glycemic foods. Immediately, if it becomes glucose, then it is high. The more the time it takes, then it is called low glycemic. Reverse word. High glycemic means high delivery. Low glycemic means low delivery. Low delivery of what? Glucose. High delivery of what? Glucose. Understood? Glycemic index. So next is glycemic load. Glycemic load is the amount of glycemic index rich foods that you give into the body, which means in simple words, it is the amount of carbohydrates that you ingest into the body and the quality. Quantity and quality clubbed together is your glycemic load. For example, for easy understanding of you, which you generally understand, what is training load? Training load is both training volume and training intensity. Quality, quantity. Similarly, quality and quantity will determine the load. Okay, clear? So, any more questions?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, Victor.
Ma'am, we are talking about carbo loading, and it was said that it is for endurance and extra endurance athletes. So,
Yes.
what about the protective foods and regulatory foods that which we have to intake, like regarding the proteins and vitamins?
I think the class has misunderstood the concept. See, carbohydrate consumption before training is different. For example, before you come to a training session, an athlete comes to a training session. Remember, I said they should have their muscle glycogen stores in proper amounts. Okay.
Yes.
So they are consuming carbohydrate because glycogen is what? Carbohydrate. Correct. So they should consume carbohydrate. Eating carbohydrate is not carbohydrate loading. This is first part. Okay. Just eating carbohydrate before a training session is not carbohydrate loading. Carbohydrate loading is a specific nutritional strategy combined with training strategy to give performance benefit, and this is usually done before the competition.
Okay.
And also the athlete is trained for this adaptation in between.
Okay. Yes,
Okay.
that I understood. But when
Yes,
talking
I'll come.
about protein,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, Victor. First thing is
Yes.
you should understand that consuming carbohydrates is not carbohydrate loading. This is one. So second question is, what about functional foods, prebiotics, probiotics, antioxidants, phytochemicals, all these? Antioxidants, phytochemicals, or even probiotics, all these are called functional food. The word functional food means each food has a specific function in our body. It has multiple functions, no doubt, but they have very specific function, which is a highlight. For example, if you talk about carbohydrate, the highlight function is what? Fuel source. Protein, highlight function is what? Building.
Bodybuilding.
Tissue, yes, bodybuilding, tissue repair. This is the main function. Similarly, antioxidants have a specific function. What is the specific function? The function is whenever we exercise, the body releases free radicals. Free radicals are single oxygen molecules. Oxygen has two atoms attached together to give one molecule. Oxygen is always written as O2. Okay. Whereas when it is a free radical, it is not O2. It has one lone oxygen atom in incomplete pair of an oxygen. Okay. So this is damaging to the cell. So antioxidant, what it will do is, this will try to control the damage caused by this oxygen. Which oxygen? The free radical. Free radical means which is not complete as a pair. For example, I'll give you a very odd example. Generally, people are scared about ghost. When the soul leaves the body, then that is a ghost. It is very scary. People think it is dangerous. Okay. When the body is with the soul, then only the human being is a living thing. Similarly, when oxygen molecules are together, atoms are together as O2, then only they are healthy. Otherwise, they damage these cells. So what is the function of antioxidant? Anti means against the damage caused by the free radical oxygen. Okay, this is one.
Yes.
When it comes to phytochemicals, phytochemicals are specific in nutrient compositions, chemicals found in food. Example, watermelon has citrulline. That's a phytochemical. Beetroot has beta-alanine. The phytochemical actually is anthocyanin. The red colors, the purple colors found in food is because of a chemical substance called anthocyanin. Okay, so each of the food, for example, mango, it is orangish to yellow to orangish in color. Darker the orange color, darker is the amount of carotene. Okay, so these have a very specific function. These are chemicals which give the food that color, and this chemical is a phytochemical. Phyto means light, chemical you understand. So what is color? Color is against a light. If you know how light you get the color light, it is based on the dispersion factor. Okay, so that's why they're called phytochemicals. What is the function of these phytochemicals? The function of phytochemicals is not only to protect the body, but also give you tiny benefits. Classical example. The red color we said is anthocyanin. This anthocyanin helps the heart. If you've heard people say pomegranate or red in color is good, all patients with heart problems should eat it, is because it helps the heart. So similarly, there are many phytochemicals. So these phytochemicals have a specific function. Okay. Next, going on to probiotics. Probiotics are food which is a result of good bacteria added to the food. Example, curd. Curd is a probiotic. Milk by itself generally has lactobacillus. Okay, that's the bacteria found in it. But when you ferment it, one more bacteria adds to it, the streptococcus. So this combination adds improved health, especially for the gut, which means your stomach portion. Okay, so probiotics are foods especially targeted towards gut health. So that's the reason they're called functional foods. Each food has a specific targeted function. So based on what the issue is, then we will have to see what has to be given to the athletes. Just because I have heard the word antioxidant, I should not encourage everybody to eat antioxidant. Just because probiotics is good, it is not required that you have to do overdose of antibiotics. You should do overdose of phytochemicals. You should do overdose of antibiotics. Since they have very specific function, overdosing is also not very advisable.
Suppose in case if we are adding more proteins or more vitamins, especially when we are under training, so what will happen? Will it contradict something or training, or till we train or something?
First and foremost is generally, why do athletes consume so much of protein? With my experience working with so many athletes over these years, the general concept what athletes have is, if I take more protein, I get more recovery. If I eat more protein, I will have more muscle. But that is not true. The reason is, research has been established over 30 years. I'm talking about 30 years of research as one point. 30 years of research, more than 30 years of research has been conducted on protein and how it can help the body in exercise. Which means for an athlete, it is finally concluded that any amount of protein beyond 2.4 grams per kg body weight is useless to the body.
So the excess.
The capping is at 2.4 maximum. And that 2.4 also is only when there is muscular hypertrophy required. If it is an endurance training session, you still go for 2.4. That 0.6 grams of protein that you're consuming is useless.
So when we are concentrating in MPS, that muscle protein synthesis.
Yes, yes. Muscle protein synthesis occurs only at an optimal values because the body has a very nice mechanism of throwing out excess. That's beautifully made. The body is beautifully made. It knows if there is a deficiency, it will try to attract more. But the moment there is less protein, the body will try to use all the protein that is consumed. But if you continuously ingest into the body, that is put into your body more protein than what is required, it will stop responding beyond a point that it is required. That is the example that I've given you. If the athlete requires 1.8 grams of protein, you give him 3 grams of protein, 1.2 grams of protein will go only as waste.
So it will not store as excess fat.
This waste has been handled. Who handles waste products? Kidney.
Ma'am?
Yes.
And then it will put more load on the kidneys then. And then athletes end up landing to the hospitals with kidney failures or damage.
See, yes, Victor, you had some question. You didn't complete it.
Actually, ma'am, it was like related to proteins and vitamins. When we are consuming it excess, will it store as fat or something in the body, or it will be a waste?
See, generally, first thing what happens is, yes, excess protein will be stored as fat only, no doubt. But before that, what it will do is it will throw out this excess waste in terms of nitrogenous compounds. Nitrogenous compounds include urea, uric acid. So if athletes are complaining with pains, especially around the joints,
Yes.
you have to take note of that. This is just a tiny thing that I'm talking to you. Okay. So any excess of protein, yes, it will be thrown out as a nitrogenous waste and a portion of it will be stored as fat. So either way it is harmful. If you store it as fat, it is harmful. If it is thrown as an extra nitrogenous waste, it also is harmful to the body. Because how long you will put the body, the kidney to pressure?
So
1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after that?
Okay, understood. So anyhow, it will be backfiring after years.
Yes, definitely at every cost. There is no escape to that.
Okay. So if you are not monitoring the athletes,
be visible to you. Today it may not be visible to you, but tomorrow it will backfire. But that tomorrow could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. But backfiring will definitely happen.
understood. So is it adequate that we need to?
If you need to consume adequate amounts of protein, depending on the sport. If it is endurance sport, somewhere around 1.6 to 1.8, or endurance training 1.6 to 1.8. If you're working on hypertrophy, 2 is advisable. Otherwise, a maximum of 2.4 if you're not getting benefit. If the hypertrophy is not visible also, you can switch to 2.4. That is the upper limit. So it depends on what kind. If I am for example, there are few people who can come to you for weight loss. Normal person, not an athlete. Assuming there is one normal person like me who has come for weight loss, who is not an athlete. So for them, not more than a maximum upper capping of 1.2 grams per kg body weight is required. So it is very subjective.
Oh, understood.
Mansi, आपका question answer हो गया?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Okay,
one
ma'am,
thing I
what is the
wanted to
difference
ask,
between BMR and RMR? Okay. ये
ma'am,
कौन है बच्चा? Yes, घनश्याम सोलंकी. मैंने RMR तो नहीं पढ़ा है, RMR, BMR. Anyways, I'll answer that question.
excuse me,
See,
ma'am.
yes, Mansi.
Sorry to interrupt. I have one more question regarding the we talked about the the water content. I wanted to ask that similarly the athletes practice for sodium also. They withdraw the sodium just before or during the training. Uh, like what is the concept and why is it usually
First and
practiced?
foremost is Mansi, you have to give me your background because you're asking questions which are really very unhealthy for athletes. The
Ma'am,
first question
actually, I
also
have
was
got,
a very unhealthy backdrop, and this question also is very harmful for the athlete.
ma'am,
So if you can just
I
give
am
me
a
some
background of
information about you, then I'll be able to help you to guide.
Ma'am, actually, I'm a physiotherapist and I did a diploma in nutrition dietetics and worked for about 1 year in PGI, Chandigarh.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there I used to see, patients who actually practiced and they landed in the hospital just because either they had, excess consumption of protein and they had kidney failures, or due to excess, fat or intake like what is practiced in Punjab. So they didn't have proper concept of how they should work out and what the diet should be. So because of the misconception, either they used to withdraw sodium, or that also landed up with the load on the kidney, and then for the protein also. So I was
Yeah,
asking for this
now I got your point. First and foremost is for any athlete who is withdrawing sodium, invariably means that athlete would have been into combat sports. He would have had higher weight than required. Therefore, for him, cutting down very abruptly is one of the methodologies of withdrawing salt from the food, total intake. Okay. Now, if you can recollect one of my slides when I was talking about hydration, there I have spoken about one hormone called the antidiuretic hormone, water balance. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So this antidiuretic hormone, what it does is very simple. Whatever is the amount of fluid that is required for the body, whether it be 55 to 60% in female or 65 to 75% in male, I'm talking the average figures. If this amount of water is there in the body, then automatically the antidiuretic hormone will, what it will do is it will stop water from being excreted. Simultaneously, what it will do is it will increase the sodium content. So once the content is more, what happens? Due to osmotic pressure between two cells, the osmosis has to happen. That is how each and every cell lives. Each and every cell lives symbiotically in balance because of the osmotic gradient. So in order to maintain this osmotic gradient, what happens? You tend to drink more because salt will make you thirsty. So that is how you do. That is the actual function. So what happens is when you drastically reduce the water content, you will remove water from the body. If you remove water from the body, since 60 to 65% of the weight itself is water, it is easy to lose weight. Okay, this is actually what has happened, or is the possible mechanisms the athletes use in order to lose weight very, very abruptly. Now, what could be an hazard is generally in case of hyponatremia, it is not very common, where the amount of sodium in the circulatory body levels is less. Among athletes, if this is the case, then automatically what will happen is they could cause confusion, dizziness, and this extensive cutting down can also cause coma. Because if you can recollect the session on minerals, sodium is involved as an cell neurotransmitter and a transporter transports mechanisms. That is, electron transport chain is maintained by sodium. So if there must be circulation of impulse from the brain to the rest of the body, it occurs only through the neurotransmitter. And this sodium plays that particular role. So therefore, going into coma, not having proper sensation in the entire body are some of the features that can occur with this. Okay, next question is differences between BMR and RMR. BMR, RMR in general are used interchangeably, generally, commonly. There is not very big difference between BMR and RMR. BMR is the state in which the metabolic rate is calculated. When you calculate metabolic rate early in the morning with an overnight fast, wake up and then straight away do the energy expenditure assessment, you get the resting metabolic rate, which means resting metabolic rate is the rate at which the body is using energy as its source for survival of the entire body, including vision, because the moment you start winking, there is some expenditure that is happening. But when it comes to BMR, BMR is a state of the same protocol done without even lights, because even that amount of brain activity, once the brain is activated, energy is used. Once you start blinking, energy is used. Those parameters is minimized. So that is the basic technical difference between a BMR and a RMR. I don't know if you understood. It is gone above the head. किसी ने भी पूछा हो क्वेश्चन? घनश्याम सोलंकी कहाँ है? घनश्याम सोलंकी, घनश्याम सोलंकी, आपको समझ में आया क्वेश्चन आंसर? Yes or no? और कोई क्वेश्चंस? Done? So should we wind up, or you have any more to ask? So if you don't have any questions, let's wind off. Okay. Wind off कर लें? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really beneficial.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. Thank you.